What if the village you tried to escape followed you home? Discover the chilling secrets of the village that vanished and find out why no one can ever truly leave. They say there used to be a village deep in the forests of central Java, a place so remote that even local maps refuse to acknowledge its existence. The only way to reach it was by following an old broken trail through the jungle. No electricity, no phone signal, no written history, only word-of-mouth stories passed down by the few who dared to venture close. The village was called Desa Siluman. In Javanese, Siluman means a shape-shifting spirit. Some say it was named that way because the village had an unnatural silence, a kind of stillness that made the birds stop singing. Others say it was because no one who entered ever came back exactly the same. My uncle, Arif, was one of them. In 1998, after the political riots in Jakarta, he left the city and went wandering across the country. He was never one for modern life. He wanted solitude. To find the soul of Indonesia, he used to say. He heard about Desa Siluman from a farmer in Banyumas. Go there if you want peace, the old man whispered, but don't listen when the forest starts calling you back. Arif wrote letters during his travels. Most were simple: weather reports, strange foods he'd tried, how many cigarettes he had left. But one day my father received a letter different from all the others. It smelled like burnt leaves. The ink was uneven, as if the pen was trembling. The letter said, "I've found it, the village they whisper about. There are no roads here, just stone steps covered in moss. The people, they smile too long. At night something moves above the roofs, long fingers, and something whispering in the trees. I think the forest speaks here, not the people. If I don't come back, don't look for me. They know when you're searching." That was the last we heard from him. My father reported it to the police. They shrugged. "Happens all the time," one officer said. "Men go into the mountains and choose not to come back." But something about that village haunted us. Years later, I found the letter hidden inside my father's old box, with a map drawn in pencil. A thin trail marked with a red dot. The name scribbled above it, Desa Siluman. And now I'm the one who's going to look for it. I left for Central Java on the third week of August. Dry season. The sky was too blue, too clean, like the land itself was holding its breath. The trail on the map led me past rice fields, half-dry rivers, and the bones of bridges long forgotten. Most villagers I asked along the way either looked away or pretended not to hear me. One woman, an old herbalist with clouded eyes, gave me a single warning before I entered the forest path. "Don't answer if they call your name. It won't be your voice that's calling." I laughed politely. She didn't. The trail narrowed into a corridor of ancient trees, thick with vines and fog that shouldn't exist during the day. The deeper I walked, the quieter everything became. No crickets, no wind, not even the crunch of leaves beneath my boots. It felt like the air was swallowing sound. Then I saw it. Stone steps covered in moss, exactly like in my uncle's letter. There were offerings placed along the path. Small bowls of rice, wilted flowers, feathers and hair. A shrine sat beside the first step, cracked and blackened, as if scorched from within. Something primal inside me told me not to continue. But I did. With each step, the forest shifted. The light dimmed. The smell of wet earth turned metallic, like rusted blood. I began to hear something. Faint music, like bamboo flutes, but broken, jagged. It was coming from ahead. Or behind. My hands trembled as I took out my phone. No signal. The screen blinked twice, then died. And that's when I heard my name. Ray. Soft, like someone mimicking my voice from a distance. It wasn't a shout, it was a lure. "Ray!" My legs froze. The trees were dense, but I saw movement, just beyond the corner of my eye. Pale limbs bending the wrong way, crawling just beyond the reach of sunlight. I remembered what the old woman had said. I didn't respond. I didn't look back. Instead, I whispered to myself, over and over, "It's not me. It's not me." The path finally opened into a clearing. There it stood, the village. Wooden houses with roofs made of blackened thatch, a stone well at the center. Laundry hung on lines, though no one seemed to be around. Doors stood slightly open, swaying even though there was no wind. Then a woman stepped out of the largest house. She smiled at me. Too wide, too long. And without blinking, she said, "We've been waiting." She wore a white kabaya, immaculate, almost glowing in the dim light. Her skin was pale like wax, and her hair reached far past her waist, jet black and unmoving, even in the shifting air. But what unsettled me most was her smile. It didn't flicker, didn't fade, and her eyes never blinked. "You came from the lowlands," she said softly, "like your uncle." My chest tightened. "How do you know about my uncle?" I asked, stepping back. "He stayed with us. He's still here." Her voice was musical, almost hypnotic. I wanted to believe her, but something behind her eyes pulsed, like a ripple in water that wasn't there. She beckoned me forward, and for a moment, I couldn't resist. My feet moved of their own will, one step, two, until I stopped myself by digging my nails into my palm. A drop of blood hit the earth, and then something changed. The woman twitched. Just slightly. It was like the scent of my blood snapped her mask. Her smile cracked, just barely, and she turned her head toward the forest, as if hearing something I couldn't. Then, without another word, she walked back into the house, leaving the door open. I stood alone in the center of Desa Silimon. Then I saw them. From the shadows between houses, faces began to emerge. Men, women, children, watching from behind windows and narrow doorways. Silent, still, all of them smiling, none of them blinking. I stepped toward one of the houses. A child watched me through the cracked wooden slats. His eyes were too black, no whites, no reflection, just void, and his smile was too perfect, as if it had been carved into his face. "Are you real?" I whispered. The child tilted his head and whispered back, "Are you?" The world around me pulsed. The houses flickered, just for a second, as if the village was struggling to hold its shape. Like a memory too old to stay clear. Suddenly a bell rang. A low iron bell. Once, twice, then again. The sound vibrated through my chest like thunder underwater. And then they all moved, at once. The villagers turned away and disappeared into their homes. Doors slammed shut, window shutters snapped closed, and then silence. Total, unnatural silence. Until one last whisper came from inside the well at the village center. "He's still here." The silence after the bell rang wasn't just the absence of sound, it was alive, pressing against my skin like invisible hands. Even my heartbeat felt too loud, as if the village itself might hear it. I turned slowly toward the well. It sat in the center of the village, built from black stones that shimmered faintly, like they were wet. Vines had wrapped around its base, and a wooden bucket hung from the rope above, gently swaying without wind. The whisper had come from inside. I stepped closer. "Uncle?" I called out, barely above a whisper. Nothing. But then, a metallic clink. The sound of something scraping against stone. I hesitated, but my legs moved on instinct. I reached the edge and looked in. Darkness. Thick, absolute, pulsing darkness. My eyes struggled to adjust. I couldn't see the bottom, but I could feel something. Like a pull, not physical, but emotional. A tug in my mind, like a memory trying to resurface. Then a shape moved below. I jerked back, stumbling and falling onto the hard stone path. The bucket dropped. It fell without sound. No splash, no echo, just gone. Then, fingers. Long, pale fingers gripped the inner edge of the well. Wet, wrinkled, twitching. They pulled upward, slow and deliberate, as something began to rise. I scrambled back, breath catching in my throat. A face appeared, half covered in wet hair. Eyes clouded, mouth torn at the corners, grinning. But it wasn't my uncle. It wasn't anything human. You shouldn't have come, it whispered in his voice. Then it vanished. Just like that. The fingers slipped back, the hair disappeared, and the well returned to stillness. No ripples, no sound. I ran, through the village, past the houses, toward the path I came from. But the forest wasn't there. Where the trail had once been was now a wall of trees, dense, impenetrable. The stone steps were gone, as if they'd never existed. I spun around. The houses had changed. Older, rotting, tilted like they were melting into the earth. The colors had drained from the wood. No lights, no life. The air smelled of iron and rot. I wasn't just trapped. The village had shifted, and I was now part of it. I didn't know how long I stood there, staring at the trees that had sealed my way back. Minutes? Hours? The sun no longer moved, suspended in a dull orange haze like time itself had paused. Desperation clawed at my throat. I turned, searching for anything. Any break in the houses, a trail, a sign. But all I saw was the same, decay. Then one house caught my eye. It sat at the edge of the village, separate from the others. Its walls were cleaner, untouched by rot. The door hung slightly ajar, and above it, carved into the wooden frame, were 3 letters, AR1. My breath caught. A reef. I stepped inside. Dust floated in thick beams of amber light. The air was still, but heavy, like something had been waiting, just out of sight. Old furniture stood untouched. A wooden table, a mattress stuffed with hay, a broken mirror hanging crooked on the wall. And on the table, a journal. Its cover was worn leather, the pages yellowed and brittle. I opened it gently. The handwriting was my uncle's. March 12th. I've been here 3 days, or maybe 3 weeks. It's hard to tell. The villagers smile, but they don't speak much. They move at night. I hear their feet scraping against the dirt outside my door. I hear them breathing. I think they're waiting for me to forget where I came from. March 18th. The well speaks. It shows you things, not just images, but memories that don't belong to you. Last night it showed me a woman in white, standing at my grave. I think she was crying, but she had my voice. March 23rd. I saw myself walking through the village today, but I hadn't left the house. The other me turned to look at me and smiled. My teeth were too long. The last page had only a single sentence scrawled violently across the paper. This place eats time. If you stay, you fade. I closed the journal, hands trembling. A floorboard creaked behind me. I turned sharply, but no one was there. Then I saw it, in the mirror, behind me, a man. His face was my uncle's, but older, worn, eyes hollow. He raised a finger and pointed at the journal. Finish it, he whispered, and then the mirror shattered. The mirror exploded outward, not inward, as if something had broken free from the glass rather than entered it. I shielded my face with my arms. Shards rained down but never touched me. They stopped midair, floating, trembling. Then they fell, without a sound. I backed away, heart racing. The house had gone completely still again, but the air felt heavier. I looked down at the journal, its last page now different. The ink was still wet. Someone had just written, "You're not alone anymore." A sharp knock came from the door. Then again, and again. 3 perfect knocks, evenly spaced. Not forceful, not frantic, just patient. I didn't move. Another knock, then a voice. "Ray, it's me. Open up." My blood ran cold. It was my voice. Exactly my voice. And, "Ray, I'm scared," it continued. "Please let me in." I stayed frozen. Every part of my body screamed to move, to run, but I was rooted to the floor. "I can't stay out here. They're watching me. Just let me in." Then silence, long and suffocating. I crept to the window, pulled the curtain aside with 2 fingers, and saw myself, standing just beyond the porch, Same clothes, same face, but the eyes, they were black, hollow, like ink had poured into them and never stopped. It grinned. Then he turned and walked away, not down the trail, there was no trail, but deeper into the village, toward the well. I grabbed the journal and stepped outside, cold sweat coating my back. The village had shifted again. Now it was dusk, even though it had been late morning just minutes before. The houses leaned inward, as if trying to collapse into themselves. A thick fog crawled along the ground, licking at my ankles. I followed the doppelganger, past the empty houses, past the well, which now bubbled as if boiling from within. He disappeared around the edge of a tall structure I hadn't seen before. A building made of dark wood and stone, shaped like a traditional pendopo, but larger, taller, and somehow wrong. The wooden beams twisted unnaturally. The roof was lined with animal skulls, and inscribed above the entrance, painted in dried blood, was a single word. Pulang. It means go home. But I had the sinking feeling it wasn't a warning. It was a command, and it wasn't meant for me. The pendopo loomed ahead, like a wound in the sky, its sharp, warped angles cutting into the air. The word pulang above the doorway pulsed faintly, like it had just been written. I hesitated, but something pulled at me. Not physically, mentally, like a thread in my mind had been hooked. I stepped inside. The air was thick, humid, and humming, like hundreds of mouths whispering in a language I couldn't understand. The walls were covered in charcoal drawings, people without faces, children with animal heads, trees with open mouths. In the center of the room was a circle of salt and ash, and standing in it was me, or rather, the other me. He smiled, wider than before. Finally, he said, voice lined with static. You're here. I gripped the journal, unsure if it was a shield or a curse. What are you? I asked. I'm the version of you who stayed, he said, stepping forward. The one who listened, who obeyed, who became what the village needed. I shook my head. This place, this village, it's not real. He laughed. It's more real than you are. Your world forgets. This one remembers. He reached into the ash circle and lifted something. A mask, carved from bone, painted red, with too many teeth. Put it on, he said. No. His smile vanished, and behind him the walls shifted. Figures began to emerge, dozens of them. Villagers, the ones I saw before. Silent, wide-eyed, grinning. But now I saw what they truly were. Hollow. Their faces flickered like broken projections. Some were animal, some human, some a twisted mix of both. They began to chant, Pulang, Pulang, Pulang. My head throbbed with each repetition. The floor warped beneath me. Then the other me lunged. He tackled me to the ground, snarling, bones cracking as his form twisted, lengthened, bent backward. There's only room for one of us, he hissed. I fought back, struggling to keep the mask away from my face. It was warm, too warm, like it was alive. Just as the mask touched my cheek, a voice screamed from outside the pendopo. Ray! I froze. That voice, it was my uncle. I turned, and for a brief second through the open door, I saw him, standing at the edge of the well, waving frantically. Run! I kicked the creature off me and sprinted for the exit. The villagers screamed in unison. The pendopo shook violently as if the building itself were trying to collapse on me. I burst outside, gasping. But my uncle was gone, and the well was bubbling black. The black liquid inside the wheel churned like tar in a storm. It gave off no steam, no heat, just the stench of old blood and burned wood. I called out again. Uncle. No answer. Only a rising hum, deep and resonant, echoing from beneath the village. Then I saw it on the edge of the well. His watch, worn leather band, cracked face, still ticking. I reached for it, As soon as my fingers touched the metal, the ground quaked. Stones crumbled, the wooden posts of the well splintered, and the black tar began to rise. It didn't splash over. It climbed, like a living thing. Tentacles of shadow slithered up the sides, dripping but never falling, reaching for me. I stepped back, but not fast enough. One tendril lashed out and wrapped around my ankle. It burned cold, searing cold. I screamed and kicked, pulling free, stumbling back onto the stone path. The tar hissed, retreating, almost in pain. I looked down. My ankle was bruised dark, veins beneath the skin turning black for a moment before fading. But something had changed. The world around me slowed. The clouds above froze in mid-drift. The villagers stopped, like mannequins, caught mid-step, mouths open. And from the well, a voice echoed, not in my ears but in my mind. One must stay. One must feed. Then the ground cracked beneath the well. The structure groaned and collapsed inward, swallowed by the black void. A shockwave of silence pulsed through the village. The buildings flickered. And for the first time I saw it. Beyond the village, a path. Not like before, this one glowed faintly, a line of fireflies tracing into the trees. It pulsed, calling to me. But behind me I heard my uncle's voice again, closer now. "Ray, don't leave me." I turned and saw him halfway out of the well. But his body wasn't whole. His arms were too long, his eyes too wide, the smile too still. "You came for me," he said. I didn't respond, because I knew, deep down, that wasn't him. "Stay. We'll be family again. We'll remember together." He took a step forward. Behind him, dozens of eyes opened in the tar, and all of them were mine. I couldn't move. I was trapped between the well, with my uncle's twisted form half emerging, and the glowing path leading out of the village. The eyes in the tar stared at me. Hundreds of eyes, all mirroring my own, watching from the darkness below. I took a step back, but the ground shifted underfoot, trembling as if the earth itself was waiting to swallow me whole. The village, the people, everything had stopped moving, frozen in place. But the tar, the eyes, they were never still. They were watching, always watching. "You know you belong here, Ray." My uncle's voice rang out again, his voice now multiple, echoing from all around me. The village never forgets. It remembers all. I shook my head, the weight of his words pressing down on me. The realization hit me like a cold wave. This village, these villagers, everything I'd seen had been waiting for me to remember, waiting for me to become a part of it. But I refused. I turned toward the glowing path, my heart pounding as I ran, ignoring my uncle's call behind me. "Don't run, Ray," he crooned. "You can't escape. You're already here. You're already one of us." I pushed myself faster, breath ragged, feet pounding against the dirt path. The forest closed in around me, the trees thickening as if to block my way, but the fireflies, those faint lights, showed the way forward. They led me through the dark, twisted woods, far from the village that had been my prison. With every step, I felt lighter. The darkness receded, replaced by a strange, distant warmth. And then, as I rounded the final bend of the path, I saw it, the edge of the forest. The village was no longer in sight. I collapsed, gasping for air, but the suffocating weight lifted. The voices, my uncle's voice, faded into the distance, and as the last tendrils of the fog cleared from my mind, I saw the sky above me, blue, clear, free. I was out. I had escaped. But as I lay there catching my breath, something shifted in the air. The ground beneath me trembled once more. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking, not from fear, but from recognition. In the distance, beyond the edge of the trees, the village remained, still, silent. And in the farthest corner of the clearing, a shadow loomed, a figure watching. I knew what it was. It was me. The figure in the distance didn't move, but I felt it, its gaze. It wasn't just watching me, it was waiting for me to understand. I stood, my legs still weak from the terror of the village, and took a tentative step forward. The shadow remained, unmoving, almost solid against the pale moonlight. I wanted to run, to keep going down the path I had just fought so hard to find. But something about the figure held me. I hesitated. Then, as if the figure had read my thoughts, it spoke. "You can't leave, not yet." The voice was my own. It didn't echo, didn't twist with the memories of the village. It was me, clear and undistorted. I stumbled back, eyes wide. "What?" I whispered, my throat dry. "Who? Who are you?" The figure stepped forward, just enough for the moonlight to catch its face. My face, but older, worn, no longer mine. "I'm the part of you that never left." The shadow shifted, and suddenly it wasn't just a figure. It was a reflection, flickering like a flame caught in the wind. The world around me blurred as it seemed to stretch and bend, the forest becoming more alive, more real. I realized then that I wasn't standing at the edge of the forest. I was standing at the border of the village. It was still there. It had never truly left, and neither had I. "You think you've escaped," the figure continued, its voice cold and smooth. "But that's not how it works. The village doesn't let you go. You're part of it now. You always were." I shook my head, panic rising in my chest. "No, no, this isn't real. I left. I escaped." My voice broke as I shouted, as if trying to convince myself, but the figure only smiled. "You're not in control anymore. You're just a visitor in your own life. And we, the ones who stayed, are the ones who decide." I stumbled back, heart hammering in my chest, feeling the ground beneath me grow unstable again. The trees creaked, the shadows shifted, and then, through the branches of the dark forest, I saw them. The villagers, silent, watching, waiting. I tried to run again, but the path was gone. The clearing had closed in around me. I was back in the village. The village was no longer a quiet, decaying place. It had come alive. The air had changed again. No longer heavy with the fog or the suffocating silence, it buzzed with a strange energy, alive but sickly, as if every breath I took was tainted by the village itself. The walls of the houses had come closer, the space between them almost suffocating. The ground felt unstable, like walking on the surface of a dream that might shatter at any moment. And then I heard it, the soft sound of feet scraping the earth. I turned. The villagers were moving again, but they weren't the same. They didn't walk. They glided. Their feet barely touched the ground. Their faces were wrong. They were faces I recognized, familiar faces, friends, strangers, all twisted, all wrong, all smiling. But their eyes, those black, hollow eyes, followed me as I moved. I ran, heart pounding, but every direction I turned brought me right back to the center of the village. The well. It stood there, silent, still as though it had never moved. It seemed even darker now, its edges sharp and almost alive. The whispers from below, the voices, distant at first, were louder. I could hear them clearly now. They were calling my name. "Ray! Ray, come home!" I backed away, but the path was blocked. The villagers closed in, slowly but relentlessly. Their eyes were empty, and their faces, those twisted, contorted reflections of my own, grew sharper, angrier. "You can't escape!" they chorused in unison, their voices merging into a single, chilling note. "You belong to us now!" I stumbled backward and fell to the ground, the cold earth biting into my palms. I could hear the crackle of the air, the movement of shadows, and the unmistakable sound of something, someone approaching. A shadow fell across me. Oh, I looked up. It was the figure from before, the one with my face. He was smiling again, that wide, stretching grin that never reached his eyes. His hands were stretched toward me, and he whispered, "You will remember. You must." I reached for the journal, but it was gone. I turned to the well, the deep black pit, and I knew what I had to do. I stood shaky as the villagers closed in around me, their twisted faces growing more monstrous with every step. The figure, my doppelganger, was waiting. "It's time," he said softly. I took a step forward toward the well, knowing that what awaited me there would either end this nightmare or pull me deeper into the abyss. I had no choice. I jumped. The fall was endless. I plunged through darkness, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and rot. My body twisted as if gravity itself had abandoned me. There was no sound, no wind, no heartbeat, just the sensation of falling. And then, as if some unseen force reached out and pulled me from the void, the world around me solidified. I landed hard on cold stone. My knees buckled, but I caught myself before hitting the ground. The air here was thick with the same oppressive weight I had felt in the village, only more suffocating. The silence was absolute, broken only by the soft dripping of water, echoing from somewhere far beyond the walls of the cavern. And I stood slowly, my legs trembling beneath me, and I looked around. The space was vast, too vast. It stretched far beyond what the eye could see. Tall, jagged rock walls reached up into the shadows, disappearing into the dark void above. There were no exits, no clear path out, only the endless labyrinth of rock. It was cold here, colder than anything I'd ever felt, and familiar, like I had been here before. There was no need to look at the walls to know where I was. The symbols, the marks, they were here, carved deep into the stone. Symbols that mirrored the carvings in the pendopo in the village. They were the same. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, but the air felt different. It hummed now, low, almost like a heartbeat pulsing through the stone. And then I heard it, the whisper, "You found it." I whipped around, but no one was there. It was then that I saw it, the source of the whisper. At the center of the cavern, a pool of black liquid spread out in a circle. The same liquid from the well, but here it was still, quiet, waiting. I approached it cautiously. As I neared the edge, my reflection appeared in the surface, distorted and flickering. My face was there, but so was the other me. The reflection twisted and writhed like a living thing, stretching as if trying to break free from the confines of the pool. My doppelganger's face stared back at me, grinning wide, eyes full of something unnameable. "You always knew," the reflection said, its voice echoing through the cavern, "that this was the end. You just didn't know when." I recoiled, stumbling back, but my legs were weak. My feet slipped on the slick stone floor, and I fell hard onto the ground. The world around me blurred, spinning out of control. And then the voice spoke again. "The village remembers. You are one of us now, forever." A cold hand gripped my wrist. I didn't have to look to know who it was. The other me was standing behind me, his fingers digging into my skin. The pressure was unbearable, and the reflection in the pool rippled violently, as if the liquid was alive, breathing. The walls began to close in, the air thickened, the weight of the place, of the village, pressed down on me like a vice. And then with a snap, everything stopped. The world was still. The cavern was empty. The pool was gone. The walls, the markings, vanished. All that remained was the echo of my own breath. I stood in the middle of nothing, alone. Except I could feel it. The village had never left, and I never truly escaped. I had become a part of it, forever.